First of all, hello everyone and welcome to yet another webinar. We bring expert views, opinions, industry best practices and practical tips for the HR community and employees. Let me start by giving introduction to today's guest, Devkiran Kathoria. She's not new to Synergita and Synergita audience and HR in general. She's a seasoned HR technology executive with experience in leading and managing large-scale HR transformation. She's a recognized leader in the areas of applying technology in talent management, acquisition, L&D, and DEI. Dev currently serves as Director Talent Agility for Seagate Technology. Without further ado, let's start the conversation with Dev. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Dev.
It's my pleasure, Sajin. Last time we had a very hearty discussion. There were so many topics we covered. So I look forward to today and hopefully learn a little bit from you and our audience.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have such great experience in HR transformation, and that's why we keep coming back to you. But I want to get down to the brass tacks, right? Let's start by kind of decoding what is performance reviews and why do companies do it?
A very basic question and still a very interesting one because, most of us think that performance reviews are a process by which orgs evaluate an individual, right? But I would say it's more of an assessment of the job performance of the individual. Mostly it is done on a yearly basis, but also important to remember that the purpose for performance review is also to provide employees and managers with feedback on their work, what they can improve, how they can grow and learn. And so more than just saying a score, it is also about identifying where is that development opportunity, where is that growth opportunity, and how do we then grow them in the company for their future. So it's also about career development and learning. And I would say it is, was just saying it is also a lot about identifying training needs. A lot of training needs are identified through these performance measurements and feedback. And if done right, I feel it's also a great tool for motivating and retaining your employees, because then you get to recognize, reward, and celebrate their achievements.
Yeah, that's such a great thought, right, Dev? I mean, feedback is so valuable. It allows you to develop your career. It helps you with identifying training needs, right? It's so important to an employee. Then why do people dread performance reviews?
You are right. Performance reviews can be a source of stress and anxiety for many people. And I think some of the top reasons would be, number one, fear of criticism. People are really afraid of receiving negative feedback. They don't like receiving a negative feedback. And also not everybody knows how to give feedback. So even if the intent is right, it might come across as someone who's criticizing you, right? So and nobody likes to be criticized. No humans like to be criticized. So in fact, there was an experiment done recently and I was very impressed. I posted that video on LinkedIn where it showed that if you're constantly criticizing a plant, not a human, but a plant, versus a plant which grows without any criticism or good feedback, or versus a plant which was given positive feedback, the growth was very different. The plant which was criticized did not grow to its full capacity. So this is why criticism doesn't do well. So there is fear of criticism. Lack of preparation is another one. We are so consumed with our day-to-day work that we don't necessarily think of preparing and going to the conversations, right? We just go in and we go with what we think is right, rather than actually quantifying it or qualifying what we are saying, both for managers and employees, right? Then about feeling judged, right? When we talk about criticism, it also results in that feeling of, oh, I am being judged, like, as if I'm in school and if this is a report card. So that's another reason, especially employees feel that that's undermining their value, right? And then uncertainty about the future, because performance reviews are mostly linked with promotions, sometimes with your bonuses. So what will happen now? What will happen if I do not get a meet expectation, exceed expectation? What is the next step for me? Will I meet my career goal? So I think those things are also there. So there's that uncertainty about what next also kind of holds people back and makes it a little bit of a dread, a lot of dread for that matter.
Right. I think I fully agree with you on that, the uncertainty aspect, and this once in a year, idea of performance management and looking through the rear view mirror and then kind of judging, criticizing is not easy. It's very anxious. Plus, it's kind of tied to your performance, promotion, compensation. It can be dreadful. There's no doubt about that. And talk about add criticism into that whole mix. You have a full emotion going high for everybody. No doubt about that. But Dev, as a HR transformation leader and who has been involved in this process a lot and all that, how can this dread be prevented?
So I think preventing this dread, as we are calling it, it's also something that is a very long-term process. It's not like it's not like a magic wand that you swing it and like Harry Potter would do, cast a spell and it's done, right? So not just this, but any transformation, any process, any change that we bring in is something that is long-term and has to be sticky with the culture. So first most important thing is to create that positive culture around performance reviews, right? How do we encourage open and honest communication and promote that culture of feedback, continuous feedback and continuous improvement for that matter? Encouraging employees, managers to have regular conversations about performance rather than relying solely on formal performance review, which could be once a year or once in 6 months. And then this then helps reduce the stress associated with these reviews. Sorry. At Seagate, while our performance reviews are annual, we do encourage quarterly check-ins and review of goals as well as development plans, right? So we have a specific career conversation guide and quarterly check-in guide that can be used for managers and by managers in these check-in discussions. So and then there's a lot of need for providing training and support to the managers, right? Today when I was talking with the conversation I was in, someone brought in a very important point about how managers are your face of the organization to employees. And I generally like to say that if I as an HR, if I'm an HR and my customer is an employee, then manager is really my customer success manager or customer representative. So providing training for managers on how to conduct effective performance reviews, how to provide support for employees, how to help them in chalking out their development and growth plan. That is an extremely important point to take care of. Then as an organization, making the process more transparent also helps. Clearly communicate the performance review process. What's the criteria? What's the expectation? And it kind of reduces the uncertainty we were talking about, and kind of brings or tries to bring a little more fairness. And during this process and expectation setting, try focusing more on the growth and development part, right? Focusing on employee growth and development rather than just evaluating performance, encouraging employees and managers to identify areas of improvement and set goals for the future. So you can shift that mindset from saying, oh, I am being judged, to the mindset saying, oh, I'm getting an opportunity to see what I can improve so I can grow to the next level. And there is a value add to me as an outcome of this process. I think those could be some of the points that can help you prevent the dread.
Yeah, that's true. I think there are several studies that kind of indicate that employees want more feedback, and employees are getting less meaningful feedback, and especially real time and all that, right? So when you speak about open and transparent communication quarterly and providing training support not just to employees but to managers also in terms of how to give feedback, I think that's the way to go about it, right? But how do organizations create a culture of continuous feedback and entire that growth mindset around performance feedback? Because they're still going to have the fear of criticism. Earlier it was once in a year, now this is going to happen quarterly or monthly and all that. So how do you create that culture of continuous feedback and growth mindset around performance feedback?
So again, very pertinent question, Sachin, because this needs a lot of work over a period of time, and it can't be just in the policy to say, okay, we had yearly check-ins or yearly reviews, and now you start doing quarterly check-in. There has to be a lot more work in the background that needs to be done, and that HR does in many organizations, including Seagate. I think from Seagate's perspective, there is a lot of focus on psychological safety. We, to make sure this process is delightful, and that we have that growth mindset and the culture of continuous feedback that is accepted correctly. We are trying to create an environment where employees feel comfortable providing feedback to one another. Not just manager and employees, and where managers are approachable and responsive to employee feedback. So it's a both ways, it's a two-way process. We do a lot of training and support for managers, like I mentioned, training for managers on how to give effective feedback, how to provide support for employees on how to receive and act on feedback. At Seagate, we have specific trainings for managers on how to provide psychological safety. So employees are in a receptive mode to both give and provide feedback. And we are also now focusing on making feedback a regular part of the work experience. Because rather than relying solely on formal performance reviews, this can help create a culture of continuous improvement also, right? Then we also like to promote a growth mindset, and this is not the only thing. A lot of business-wide initiatives are being taken to promote a growth mindset, but specifically focused on the performance evaluation process. We would like to focus on growth and development and not just performance evaluation. At Seagate, we have what we have done is we've integrated development plans as a part of the yearly review, which really helps us emphasize the importance of learning and improvement and recognize and reward employees for their efforts to grow and develop. So you do have a development goal, and you should meet that as well as part of your achievement of your goals. So I think that helps change the mindset to not just focus on goals but also focus on development. I think other than that, I would say very important is for leaders to lead by example. We encourage everybody, managers to senior leaders, to model the behavior we want everybody to see. We have special trainings for our leaders as well to go through on not just how to lead themselves or how to lead the organization, but also how to lead the teams, right? Very important that they are open to receiving feedback constructively and promoting a positive culture. So lead by example. And I think one of the most important things is to celebrate success and progress, right? When we do that, for both individuals and at team levels, it reinforces that positive culture around performance feedback and continuous improvement. So even if someone has taken one step, even if out of the 3 things that someone was supposed to work on. If they've achieved one, that's a cause for celebration. That is a cause of recognizing their effort. So I think this probably is something that's helping us at Seagate get closer to a more effective performance evaluation process.
Right, right. I think it is important that managers and leaders create an environment where employees can be themselves and they feel safe to provide feedback, and they feel empowered and all that, right? And I think when you speak about leadership training, lead by example, and psychological safety, I think it goes in line with celebrating success and reinforce that positivity, right? But I want to touch a little bit about what we spoke earlier, in terms of employees, right? How do you suggest employees can prepare for performance reviews, right, to avoid the anxiety and that? We spoke a little bit about lack of preparation and all that, but do you want to spend a little more time on that and then kind of explain how employees can prepare for performance?
So I think from an employee perspective, the first most important thing is to shed that believe that it's a source of criticism. Yes, there are some managers who are not easy to work with. Yes, there are difficult people around, but more often than not, it is not a source of criticism, and it is supposed to be a more constructive and collaborative process, right? So if you do have any doubts, if you feel like there is criticism, from an employee perspective, ask for specific feedback. Focus on area of improvement rather than dwelling on what's the negative part. So for example, if you feel like you're being attacked about a particular goal you did not meet, or a competency which you are being criticized for, ask specific questions. Ask what is lagging. Ask what you can do to improve it. Ask what you could have done differently to ensure that that behavior is displayed, or that goal is being met. And even at the time of goal setting, ask very clear questions on what does success mean. A lot of people, even when I talk to some of my team members in the past with some of my managers, there's a very generic way of saying, okay, if you implement this project successfully, this is meet expectation, and if you do, there is nothing on what does exceed expectation mean, right? And so what I did during my consulting time was I used to always ask even my customers, what do you mean successful? What is that success criteria? What is it that will mark it as a success? So ask very specific questions, whether it is at the goal setting or whether it is at the time of feedback. Even if you feel like someone is criticizing you, right, you can still make the best of it, and pick what is really relevant and go ahead from there. Then make sure you familiarize yourself with the company's performance, your company's performance review process, the criteria, the different rating scales, etc. Because a lot of time, like I said, we are consumed with our work. We don't really look at what the real offering of the process is. We say, oh, self-evaluation karna hai, I'll write down my thing, and then now it's my boss's job to fill in, and after that we will see if we match or not, and we will discuss and debate it. That doesn't help. You need to know the process. You need to know what is the rating criteria, because what you may assume as meet expectation could be doesn't meet expectation, or it might even be exceed expectation. So be very clear on those organizational process and criteria as well. And remember that the performance review is just one aspect of your overall performance. There are other factors that determine your value as an employee. So focus on those positive aspects of the review and use it as an opportunity to grow and develop. So when you talk to your manager, do not just focus on what went well, what did you achieve, what did you not achieve, why do they feel like all of those things. But also ask your manager, okay, what do I have to do to get to the next level or to a lateral level based on what you want to try in your career. Ask them. Push your managers to tell you how you can grow and develop, and not just talk about what is missing. And again, talk about your career goals and aspiration with your manager and have an open and honest conversation. So I think that will help elevate some of the uncertainty and stress associated with this for you. And I think one thing, even if you have the worst of the manager, you do not have to get defensive. Just try, focus on understanding and learning from the feedback. And remember that if you do have a complicated relationship with your manager, if you are facing someone who's not easy to handle with, sometimes you have to remember, not my monkey, not my circus. So take in what is most meaningful to you and just leave the rest of it there. So an analogy for that is, if you're going on a road and if you hit a garbage truck, don't take that garbage. You don't take that garbage back to your home, right? So just think like that, take what is meaningful and move on.
Wow, some great thoughts there, Dev. I liked every bit of it actually, starting from where you said that shed at looking performance review as a source of criticism, right? Just be open to get feedback, just be open to learn and grow and all that, and don't be worried about somebody else putting a value or anything on you. You know your value, you see how you can grow your career and all that. And what does success mean for you, right? I think that is very important, what you asked, right? It is important for the employee, it is important for the organization, and if the success definition can be really laid out, then I think employees can do a very good job at performance reviews and making their case and all that. So I was just saying that while we discuss a little bit about training managers and leading by example and the psychological safety and all that, I wanted you to spend a little more time on how can managers prepare for performance reviews. What are the things that they should remember? And because like you said earlier, right, that managers are not trained to give feedback the right way. Nobody taught them, right? There is no process as such, right? That's why a lot of employees feel that they don't get real-time feedback, they don't get meaningful feedback, they don't get feedback in real time. It's always hindsight and all, and sometimes employees make judgment calls, and it's very easy for managers to sit back in their leisure and then kind of look at what somebody has done and all that. But
Yes.
how can managers prepare for performance review?
And that's an interesting question, Sajjan, because a lot of times employees think I am the one being criticized and oh, I'm being judged, and it's easier for the manager to sit there and kind of give these reviews. But it's also on the other side, it's not easy for managers also. That is a lot of work because you have to do this for everybody in your team, and try to do it in the right way. And managers are also human, so they also do not like to be criticized, and they want to avoid conflict. Most people want to avoid conflict, right? So I think we'll go back to the starting of the process again, even for managers. So even as a manager, the clearer I set the expectation, the clearer I communicate to my team on what the success means. What is the format, what's the agenda, what is the objective. I think that reduces uncertainty and sort of promotes fairness. So the whole of my team knows my expectations from the very beginning. So when I go back to them in a quarterly check-in or at the end of the year, and there is no ambiguity, then that confrontational conversation can be avoided from even my perspective. So as a manager, it can be avoided from my perspective as well. So set expectations clearly and communicate them clearly. And And when you're doing the review as a manager, right, don't just think about recently what has been done, what has not been done, because there are a lot of other factors to a performance, right? And just like we, ask employees to keep a track of what they did, as a manager, it is your job to keep a track of what the employee did across the year and not just in the last 3 months. So do that, build that habit of tracking what you are talking about quarterly, or whenever your check-ins are. Look at what the person's job description is, what were they hired to do, and what have you given them. Are they doing it well? Are they clearly understanding the objective? For example, at Seagate, not just for performance, for everything else, any projects or anything that we start with a leadership intent. This is my intent, this is the outcome I expect, very clearly. And there's also a brief back from the employee. So back brief in the sense on what they understood and how will they achieve it. So it's not like a one-way discourse, it's a two-way conversation again. And just like employees, prepare for that feedback for all your employees. Don't just go in and take yes I agree, I don't agree, or one liners, but really prepare a constructive and specific feedback for each employee. Focus on their strengths and areas of improvements, and also be empathetic, be kind, consider the impact of your feedback that can be on the employee, and make sure it's delivered in a positive and supportive manner, right? Don't just go in and say you don't know this, you did not do that, but say, for example, you could have done this better, you could have taken, or you could take this training and develop that trait, something like that, instead of, again, just focusing on the negative. Don't do that. And very important, um, in India and a lot of other countries, the culture is still very hierarchy driven. So a lot of employees will come in, they will listen to you, they don't necessarily talk back, and not in a negative sense, but they will just quietly listen. So during the review, I think it's very important for the managers to practice active listening. Listen actively to the employee's perspective, ask clarifying questions to understand what's their point of view. Avoid interrupting or being confrontational if that's possible. So I think one of the things we do at Seagate is that when we do our manager trainings, especially around performance evaluation and continuous feedback and how to deliver your feedback, we encourage more listening than talking during quarterly check-ins for managers. And we suggest that approximately 30% should be the manager talking versus the employee. So that's kind of a guideline we say. So practice active listening.
That would be like music to all the employees who are listening to this, right? Like if the manager can just shut up 70% of the time, it will be much easier.
And it's hard, right? And it's hard. It's hard for managers also, but I think it helps when you start practicing it.
Absolutely, and it takes care of everything, right? It's you're considerate, you're empathetic, you're listening, and then even if you have business to be taken care of, I think you will probably have support, right? Because you're doing everything else the right way, right? So I think that's a great way to do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, forget about performance evaluations. If someone talks to you nicely and genuinely, you would want to talk to them, right? Versus someone who's a little standoffish. You will probably never want to talk to them again.
Yeah, that will really move to the employee delight zone, right? Yeah. Sure. I also want to talk about, we have these great ideas that we discussed today, right? From managers kind of documenting where the team is doing good work and maybe areas of improvement and all that. And then talking about leadership intent and outcome, some great practical tips, right? This is something that every manager can implement like tomorrow, right? But I still want to talk a little bit about how can organizations ensure that the process is objective and fair.
Well, this is a very difficult and a very probably a lot of things that an organization needs to do to get there, right? So I will share from my experience what I have seen some organizations do. I think one of the impressive examples that I saw was establishing a very, very clear criteria of evaluating performance. So one of the organizations that I worked with, they had a 3-point scale for every value, every competency, and even every deliverable, right? And it was very clear. For example, if let's say integrity or let's say innovation is one of the values that you need to showcase, then below expectation is if you do not show that trait, if you don't have any example to share about that trait, or just one in the whole year, versus if you displayed the value of innovation and integrity twice, then you are a meet expectation. If you did it thrice, then you are an exceed expectation. So and this was done every quarter, right? So just that clarity that someone is clearly displaying 3 different or giving you 3 different instances of displaying that value. If they can give you, great, they are exceed expectation. So there is lesser chance of objectivity, and the definition of what that instance looks like, what that action looks like, it was also very, very clear. So there was very little scope of misunderstanding. This is a process that is always going to be some subjectivity to it, but having that clear established criterias and definitions, rating parameters, etc., really helps drive it. Training managers is important. We've already talked about it, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but also include how to avoid bias, how to provide constructive criticism, including guidelines on how to give and receive feedback, how to do an objective evaluation. Include that in your training package for managers. And performance, a lot of times we just focus on the last year, right? But as a manager, it is also important to look at not just the recent performance, but to provide a more accurate and comprehensive picture of an employee's performance. The process needs to focus on behaviors and not just personality, and it should be, and because behaviors and are more long term. They're focus on observable behaviors rather than personality traits. And they can help ensure that, again, evaluations are a little bit more objective. Consider using technology, right? Technology helps standardize most processes, making them free from human biases, can help you even track a lot of things and result in data and analytics, help you gather more formal 360-degree feedback or anonymous feedback also sometimes, because a lot of people, when giving feedback upwards, don't want to share, especially if it's an improvement area or a negative feedback, right? So anonymous feedback can also be given. So use technology, it really helps. And we've talked about fostering a culture of transparency and open communication. Very, very important. Because if everybody can be themselves, everybody can speak up their mind, and that's the culture we have, there is already a lot of equity and fairness there. And I think one thing when we spoke last time, Sajjan, something that you touched upon is to regularly review and adjust the performance evaluation processes in org. It's not like you design it one time and it's done and you just keep following it till something you see as a big roadblock and then you want to redo it. No. Follow up with a performance evaluation experience survey or a feedback form. Maybe add related questions in your pulse surveys like we do at Seagate, right? We actually do look at manager effectiveness as one of the parameters in our pulse survey yearly, or whether your manager was effective, how was your experience with your manager, etc. So I think that feedback will help you see where there may be an area of improvement from this feedback and survey, and then you can adjust the process as well as an organization.
Absolutely. So we spoke about how we can create this transparent and open communication and how to bring in this equity and fairness into this entire process, by also collecting surveys at the end of the process and all. But what has changed recently is the remote work, right? Now,
Yes.
when your employees are working remotely, right, what challenges are thrown for performance reviews, and how can these challenges be handled? Because today, I want to just expand on that. Today, if you see a lot of these activities, relationships have become transactional, right? For example, in the older days when we were all coming to office and all, there was a vision and we had this team bonding, we were all aligned, we were all, it was more than your job, right? It was to make it something, right? Today it's transaction, it's ticket. I get one request from somebody, I get another request from somebody, it's transaction. So when you put all these challenges in the remote work, right, how do you do the performance review? How can this be handled? That's really I want to hear from you on that.
Okay. So I think one thing we've been talking about, Sajin, a lot is about communication in the last few questions and responses that we discussed. So one of the biggest challenge with remote work is communication. It's not the lack of means of communicating, but are we truly communicating the way we did in person, right? Communicating virtually just makes it more difficult for managers to assess an employee's performance, as they may not have as much direct interaction with their team, right? You don't have a way of just walking up to someone and asking small questions, right? Can you just look at it and give me a review? Let's say it's just a document that you want to send, or a critical email you are sending. Someone sitting next to you or nearby you, you can do, or during lunch breaks, or a coffee conversation, or water cooler conversations. It's very easy to gather feedback also on certain things and not just work. Generally, when you meet often in person, it kinds of builds trust faster. I wouldn't say you can't do that remotely. It just builds it faster. It's a different experience, and humans are experiential beings, so it's always better in person that ways, right? There is also lack of in-person observation, right? When I am talking to you, I'm on camera and it's for a very brief time, but a lot of times people are not turning on their cameras and you can't force them to. People are chatting, people are on MS Teams, or people are on Slack channels, they're posting on Yammer, etc. Not everybody is a English literature expert, so when they write, they may not use the right words, the tone, the exclamation marks, etc. And we live in a world of short forms, right? YOLO, you only live once. And we are moving towards using a chat language rather than actual language. So how do you convey those non-verbal cues? How do you observe what the tone is there of a person? And those things can never happen online. So that's a challenge to the behavioral assessment, or competency assessment that we talked about. Also, it can be more difficult to track the performance of remote employees, as they may not have clear visibility into work they're doing and progress they are making. So that clarity in setting goals and making sure that it's we define what success criteria becomes even more important. Building that relationship of trust between employee and manager becomes even more important, because you cannot work remotely without having that trust that your things will get done. And lastly, I think because of all this, there is a lot of focus on measurable results, right? When you're not meeting someone every day, when you're not talking to someone every day, and you're not doing that in person, the only way to say whether things are getting done is to measure the output, right? Even if you completely trust your team for doing what they're doing it well, it is the output that you will have to measure. So that focus is shifting from being more people oriented to being a lot more result oriented, which is again one of the challenges that we talked about evaluating performance, right? We need, as managers especially, we need empathy and kindness to relate to somebody's situation, step into their shoes. And so there is a far more of a need for more regular and informal feedback. The shift to remote work has kind of increased that need, and to make them feel supported. One of the things which you could do right away, and this is very close to my heart because I'm a remote employee. One of my team members sits in US, one sits in Pune, one sits in Delhi, and we have a global team that we work, very closely with across different countries: Singapore, Thailand, Springtown, and many places in US. So what we do is we have a virtual coffee. One of the things you need to do for virtual coffee is, the way we say it, dress up, show up, and there will be no talk about work at all. So we don't talk about work. We kind of get into some sort of activity which helps us break the ice and know each other better. We just talk about holidays, we talk about our life away from work, and we just kind of enjoy each other's company that way. It's a Friday, you get to choose, you can get the poison of your choice, as they say. So I think that's something you can start doing immediately, and get your teams and yourself to bond with them better.
Wow, that's great. That was helpful. So when you talk about this, these conflicts, right, that come out of when you do result-oriented conversations, and when the only way to measure someone's contribution is just by looking at the results. So what's the best way to handle conflicts during this process?
I think from an HR perspective, three things which are very important. One, address the conflict promptly, right? Don't let it simmer. It's not going to help the manager or the employee if we are sitting on it. So the sooner you resolve it, as soon as they arise, it'll help to prevent them from escalating and causing further tension between teams and the managers, right? Secondly, listen to all perspectives, right? Just like we said that you let manager, employee talk for 70% of the times, and you listen and you talk 30% of the times. I think here it's a 50-50 formula. Don't jump to a conclusion. Practice active listening again to understand the situation from both sides, to figure out whether it's a misunderstanding, whether it's a miscommunication, whether it is just something else. Sometimes in such situations you figure out both people are saying the same thing. It's just mindset that they are against each other, that they are clashing. And then as an HR team, it's very important to seek to understand the root cause. Why did it happen? Was the expectation not clear? Was there no continuous feedback to figure out if the employee was going in the wrong direction and it could have been course corrected? Whether it is the understanding of what seed versus meat versus not meat means. Is there something else? Is there a personal situation? Is there a professional situation? Why is this happening? So understanding that root cause, this is what we do for our systems as well. We don't just say, okay, fix it and move on. We always ask about what's the root cause. Why did it fail? What can we do to prevent it in future? So I think those are the three things. Address conflicts promptly, listen to all perspectives, do not jump to conclusions, and seek to understand the root cause.
Great. That's good. Active listening. Great. So how do you measure the effectiveness of this process? We spoke about doing anonymous surveys. We spoke about having the pulse and all that. But do you want to spend a little more time to explain, how can we measure the effectiveness of this process, and then make sure that it's really delightful experience for everybody and the organization moves forward?
Mm-hmm. Right. So this is probably the simpler question that you asked, Sachin, today. I think first thing we can do to measure effectiveness as an organization is do an employee and a manager satisfaction survey, right? How satisfied are managers with the process? How satisfied are employees with the process? And have them done separately, ask separate questions to them. This can help ensure that process is meeting the needs of the employees and the manager, and is helping them effectively identify areas of improvement and evaluate employees' performance, right? So that's important, one way to do that. Then you can track the implementation of action plans or the development plans, right? We give feedback, we identify areas of improvement, and then what? Is the development plan actually succeeding? Is it really going somewhere? So track the action plans. Performance improvement, we can use some performance improvement metrics as well, direct and indirect, right? Analyzing things like employee turnover, employee engagement, productivity, before and after implementing a performance evaluation process. So did it impact anything? Did it change anything? Especially, some companies do track turnover rates immediately after and before, performance evaluations happen, as a high turnover can indicate in a lot of places the dissatisfaction with the process, right? Maybe even add that as one of the reasons the exit surveys and say how many people pick that as one of the reasons. So I think this all could help us then also feed into the previous point that I said, that you look at the outcome and then constantly update, continue measuring, continue figuring out what can make this process better. It shouldn't be a one-time effort.
Great. I have last question for you. Any tips and tricks to make this successful for both employees and managers that you want to share with the audience just before I let you go?
So there's quite a bit of stuff we did talk about. So I don't think I'm going to bring up anything new, but thank you, Sachin, for a good opportunity to kind of try and summarize it then, right? So I think now, and this is for both employees and managers, so these are the common ones, right? So number one is be proactive. Take an active role in the performance evaluation process, whether it's setting goals, whether it is tracking progress, whether it is documenting achievements. Engage in regular feedback discussions, right? Even if your organization does not mandate it, be proactive, ask for feedback from your manager. As a manager, don't wait for 1 week, 1 month, or someone to come and ask. Tell your team what will help them improve, right? So be proactive. Then since we did talk about criticism, as much as we do not like the word, if improvement areas or pointing out what gap is there can be taken as criticism, so then talk about constructive criticism. Focus your feedback or think of this as an opportunity for growth and development rather than as a personal attack. And again, this goes for both managers and employees. As an employee, think of what you can extract from the feedback, and as a manager, think of how you can give the feedback from a growth mindset perspective, from how the employee can improve, rather than saying you did this wrong. Talk about what could have been done better, right? And same for employees. Think of what you can improve. Then discuss career development, right? Do not just focus on the goals. Think of performance evaluation as a tool, as an opportunity to discuss that career development, discuss the aspirations, discuss the opportunities of growth within the organization. I learned it the hard way that if you don't ask for it, you will not get it. Because when you ask for it, at least there is a 50% chance that you will get it. And managers have a broader view of opportunities inside an organization. So as an employee, express your interest, tell them what you want to do. Don't worry about whether they like it or not. Express your interest. And managers, I would encourage them all, like we do in Seagate, we use the hashtag be a talent nurturer. So that goes out for all managers. Be a talent nurturer. Help your teams grow, because if they grow, remember, you grow. And lastly, do not let any chance of celebrating achievement, success, or contribution of your team to the organization, recognize and acknowledge it. Whether you're an employee doing it for yourself, give a pat on the back to yourself if you've done well, to your colleagues, to your managers, or you're a manager. Celebrate each other, celebrate achievements. We often forget to celebrate the wins, but it can be a game changer in building trust and openness within the teams.
Wow, that's great. I especially like that hashtag, right? Be a talent nurturer. And for us here, it is create people magic. Right? But thank you all for joining us today. With that, we have come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you, Dip, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. We hope everybody found this webinar valuable and informative. If you have any questions or would like more information, please feel free to reach out to us, info@synergita.com. Until next time.
Thank you, and it's an honor to talk to you, Sachin, always. Take care.
Pleasure is ours. Bye.